in the same way that vehicle sales, moving into 2019, are trending downward versus 2018. It's only going to be like a 2% drop. So we're just barely under 17 million sales is what they're projecting for 2019. Nearly 17 million sales is still a lot of cars.
You're listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by NACS. Whether it's for food, fuel, drinks, or snacks, about half of the U.S. population shops at a convenience store every day. We'll talk about what we see at stores and what the future may hold for our industry.
You know, John, I love cars, and I know you love cars, and last spring I purchased a new vehicle. I'm excited. And, while I knew what type of car I wanted, I still did my research. I still had to do a little bit out there to make sure I wasn't getting ripped off in any way. And, there's so much information available to consumers on what type of car they may want, or really what they should purchase. And this idea that vehicle ownership is a thing of the past, I kind of feel like it might be a little bit overrated.
Absolutely. And I think that today we're going to hear from somebody who's watching this very closely, helping people make that decision, and probably has a better handle on the trends that are affecting the future of the car market than either of us do.
So welcome to Convenience Matters. My name is Donovan Woods, and I'm with the Fuels Institute in NACS, and I'm along here with my co-host.
I am John Eichberger, also with the Fuels Institute in NACS.
And today we have a special guest, Mr. Micah Muzio, the managing editor of video for Kelley Blue Book, or KBB.com. Micah's been with KBB for over 12 years, and you may have run into him at one of the major car shows or possibly seen him on the KBB YouTube channel. That's where I found him. And Kelley Blue Book is definitely one of the best known names in the auto industry. They're definitely a one-stop resource on everything you need to research a new or used car. Maybe you want to compare cars and compare prices and find cars for sale. Everything you want to do, and really to help you make a well-informed decision, Kelley Blue Book can do that. So, Micah, welcome to Convenience Matters.
It is great to be here. And what I really love is that I'm representing a brand that has more than 90 years in the industry and is icon. I am just a goofball that drives cars. So I don't know if I'm the best representative for the brand, but hey, here I am.
Well, Micah, we started this Fuels Institute about 6 years ago, and quite frankly, I'm just a guy who loves cars, loves energy, and it's just kind of figured out a job that makes sense, I actually have fun with, and it sounds like you've done the same thing.
Yeah, that's actually true. I think one of the most common questions I get is, how do I get your job? And of course, you have to come claim it from me, sort of Highlander style. So if you want to have a battle royale and seize my position, come at me, bro.
You actually did a video on that, I want to say, in the last 6 months, where you actually said, hey, you want to know how I got this job? You kind of broke it down and then said, if you want to maybe try it yourself, you gave some ideas. So maybe offline, I'll find out how that went for you. But again, thank you for doing this for us. I've been waiting for this episode for a while. I discovered you about a year or so ago on YouTube while I was just perusing, looking for someone to tell me what to do or to convince me to buy a car that maybe I shouldn't buy. And thank you for doing that. I got the car of my dreams and I'm happy with it, but it's not about me. And I kind of wanted to get your idea really before we go into this. I guess you said your company's been around for over 90 years. We've been here. We know what cars are about. Can you give us just a brief overview for maybe our audience that doesn't know what KBB.com or Kelley Blue Book really does?
What's funny is I honestly don't think anybody doesn't know what Kelley Blue Book is, but maybe they're not aware that when you talk about the Blue Book value, you're actually talking about Kelley Blue Book. It's such an embedded term in our culture that we almost think of it generically, kind of like you say Kleenex can mean like a facial tissue. Kelley Blue Book and the Blue Book value are just sort of the words you say when describing how much something is worth in the automotive realm. But yeah, Kelley Blue Book started, like more than 90 years ago, with Les Kelly's car company. And he put out this little guide offering some information about how much he would pay for used cars. And over time, that guide proved more valuable than the car dealership. And what's amazing to me is that Kelley Blue Book had the forethought to, in the 90s, put those values online. There was a very, very brief period where they charged for those values, and then they realized, no, let's just make these available, and people will come to the website. And that was prescient thinking for a brand that, was already so well established. And so Kelley Blue Book when I came on board in 2007, was already well established online, and it's continued to be a great resource for people who are researching, their next vehicle. I was looking at some data the other day, and it was talking about how, the time that people are spending, with researching a vehicle is actually decreasing, but a lot of that has to do with convenience of information online. So if I can be an advocate for anything, it's to empower consumers to do their research before they go to the dealership, where emotions are high and you might feel pressure either internally or from staff to make decisions one way or another. It's really empowering to consider what your options are before you even go out to test drive a car, or in your case, to consider your options for 3 years or more, and eventually see a video that pushes you in one direction or another. So whether I'm helping make an informed decision or just coaxing you into doing the thing you should have done years ago, I'm happy to help.
So, Michael, one of the things that we do at the Fuels Institute is we try to evaluate the consumer trends. What are they looking at? What are they thinking about buying? What are they going to be driving in the future? So we have a better understanding of how the vehicle car park in the United States and globally over time will evolve to something new. When you post a lot of videos evaluating different cars and stuff, have you seen, in terms of viewership, a trend of your viewers to look at different types of vehicles that may indicate that the industry is moving in a specific direction?
Dude, so many SUVs, which is interesting too, because in looking at the data, SUV sales, specifically in the compact SUV space, that'd be things like a Honda CR-V or a Ford Escape. Those have peaked and are starting to taper off a little bit, though they still remain quite strong. But what I'm seeing is I put a video up recently about the Kia Telluride, and that's a midsize 3-row SUV from Kia, which is a Korean brand. And I think there's two things you can take away from that: that the Koreans, and by sales numbers, they are kind of rebounding from a little bit of a dip last year, but also there is huge enthusiasm for the SUV space. Meanwhile, if I put up a video on like a Kia Rio, I mean, maybe that's not the best example, but those kind of subcompact cars are not popular in the way they used to be. People have really moved from the car space to the crossover utility space. And it makes sense too. One of the things we've seen is that people who would in years past traditionally have bought a mid-size sedan like a Honda Accord or a Toyota Camry, a lot of those people have moved down a category, but to the crossover utility space. So instead of buying a mid-size car, they'll buy a compact SUV. And if you look at the numbers, even though it's down one category, interior space is the same or better oftentimes. And then you also have that elevated seating position. So I think what we're seeing is just that people feel confident when they have an elevated seating position. They feel like they can see over traffic, and they like that verticality of a crossover style, body style. And, there's just a convenience to that. There's a reason why in my house, we bought, after my daughter arrived 4 years ago, we bought a used Honda CR-V. It was just utterly practical. My wife feels confident driving the thing. It offers a ton of space, and it's not too huge to drive. And it's reasonably efficient. All those things. Go ahead.
Donovan, it's great to hear Micah say this, because, Micah, last year we published a report, looked at 15 years of consumer purchase data called Driving Vehicle Sales, Utility, Affordability, and Efficiency. And one of the goals in that was to evaluate what are they buying, when are they buying it, how does it relate to fuel prices? Because a lot of people, say we're addicted to trucks. But these utility vehicles you're describing, a lot of them are classified as light trucks, but they're really just sedans with bigger cabins. And we're not, we've had a period of low gas prices. So a lot of people think, well, people are just buying these big vehicles because prices are low. But you just described, like, what we found is, no, these vehicles are fitting the needs of their customers and the desires of their customers. And that's why they're buying these utility vehicles, not because gas prices are low, but because these vehicles are exactly what they're looking for.
Definitely. I think when you go from a sedan into a crossover utility vehicle, it's very hard to move back. And one of the big things too is age point, where your hips sit. So my parents are getting older; they're in their 60s now, and the thing that they hate is having to climb up or down into a vehicle. And so there's something about that perfect SUV height where you literally just slide laterally into it. And that's one of the things that I bet a lot of consumers don't think of. It's not obvious to them, but there's some sort of like unspoken quality that it's just easier to live with. And I think all of those lifestyle details definitely contribute to people making that move to SUVs.
And I'm the perfect candidate for that. I am 42, and while I've had sedans my entire life, my body's about 82 years old. So getting in and out of my
stuntman, what have you been doing?
I tried out for the NBA in my backyard a couple times, and it didn't work out for me. So I've actually been a permanent resident at the local hospital in the emergency room. So after
that's where we send his mail.
Yes, indeed. I have my own room. But my wife and I, we don't have kids, and we have two small sedans. We've always had either a Corolla, Civic, or Sentra, something that size. It fit us perfectly. But you get to be around 40, 42, getting into those cars, you realize, wow, these are really low to the ground. But I love the gas or the fuel efficiency. That was always my biggest thing. That meant a lot to me. But then you get around and you see these cars like a Subaru Crosstrek. You see the Ford Escape. You see different cars that are a little bit higher, but they have similar, if not the same, fuel efficiency. And started thinking, why don't I get one of these? Because when I'm in these, I can literally just, as you said, slide in. I don't go down too far. I don't have to get out too high. It's a perfect match. And when I purchased my car, which is an Outback, it is almost everything I dream, because you can just slide in and the fuel efficiency is there for what we do in our life. And something I noticed, we went through that report that John mentioned, the driving vehicle sales, people buy what they need. If they don't go in and get something that they maybe didn't need, most people just get what they need. They can't focus on, well, this gets 20 miles per gallon, this gets 25 miles per gallon. I have 4 kids. What do I need? And you make that purchase based on that. So have you found when it comes to the types of cars you're reviewing, I know you mentioned you see more CUVs and SUVs in terms of people looking at them. What's your perspective in terms of what happens to that mid-car segment moving forward? Do you see that changing where you see more automakers eliminating that altogether, or what's your prediction on how that plays out?
I think there's going to be contraction in that space, but I think there's also still plenty of people who buy cars in that mid-size sedan category. I think one possibility is to offer some of the features and functionality that you find in an SUV in that mid-size space. So you might see like roof height increase a little bit, or maybe you'll see seat height come up a touch. So it's still a sedan, but it's maybe a kind of taller sedan, or it's a little bit more accommodating. Personally, and this is a cliche among automotive journalists and car reviewers, I'd love to see the triumphant return of wagons, but as Americans, we absolutely deny that. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see wagon variants that are a little bit raised and offer similar functionality to a CUV, but they're actually just wagons masquerading as SUVs. Kind of like a Subaru Outback.
Correct. No, it is. And that's, I'll be honest, I am able to put any of my DJ equipment, which I still have, in the back without messing up anything. At the same time, I don't have to put anything but me, my wife, and my small dog. So, and it's comfortable both ways. And I think utility, that's the key word. People want to be able to do multiple things with one thing. I love sports cars, but in my life right now, it doesn't do anything but one thing. So that's just fun. So it's not practical for me anywhere else, but again, most families need something that can do multiple things and provide multiple outlets for different parts of the family.
Yeah, though DJ in a sports car does sound awfully cool. So
it does.
Just from an image perspective, maybe rethink that. Yeah, maybe get back into that space.
It's really hard to move the equipment in the back of a two-seater.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Well, are you committed to being cool or not? Come on.
We've already established he's 82.
I'm out.
So no. Okay, so we've established that Americans are pretty much they like the utility vehicle because it fits their needs. But one of the things we look at the Fuels Institute consistently, and at NACS, as we look at the demand for liquid fuels going forward, is the evolution of zero emission vehicles, the electric vehicles. And you read the headlines, and if you're in the fuel retailing business, you're panicked because the headlines tell you that the world's ending tomorrow. But we look at the evolution, and we know we're only like 2% of vehicles are electrified, and it's going to take a long time to convert the fleet. But how much attention are you seeing through your platforms for these alternative fuel vehicles, the plug-in hybrids and the battery electric vehicles? And is the hype and the attention through your channel, are they matching up, or is it more a slow roll that we're seeing as the market evolves?
I would say it's definitely a slow roll. There's more visibility on the alternative propulsion vehicles we cover at Kelley Blue Book than the sales would justify. But I think there's also something about an inevitable future for electrified vehicles. So it's more a matter of we're going to get there at some point. In fact, literally, like in my driveway right now, there's a Hyundai Kona electric and it's charging. And later I'm going to drive out of here. But the thing is, you still, even in that electrified future, need infrastructure to support vehicles like that. And whether that's a DC quick charge station, I'd rather charge my electric vehicle somewhere where I can get a Sprite than, or get myself a Twix or something like that, than just the middle of nowhere. So I think that infrastructure and making, the ability to travel real distance, a pleasant experience, that there's still going to be a need for all of that infrastructure. And one of the things I've noted too, EVgo, they are heading up some electric infrastructure. They've got a project going with Chevron, putting electric charging stations at several Chevron stations. And it seems like a really logical kind of pilot program. And I think that's probably how things are going to proceed, is that you're still going to need that, you guys rightly point out at the Fuel Institute that, fuel can take many forms. It doesn't have to be liquid necessarily. So, whatever it takes to motivate a vehicle to move forward in the future, whether that's electrons or hydrogen or gasoline or some other thing that we haven't, an arc converter, who knows, like a magical technology that doesn't exist. Child's wishes and dreams, whatever that is. Somebody's going to have to supply that, and there'll have to be that infrastructure to support it.
I testified before the United States Senate several years ago about fuels and stuff, and I said, look, fuel retailers will sell anything. It doesn't matter. It can be a liquefied chicken McNuggets with barbecue sauce. If it powers a car and the customers want to buy it, we will sell it. It's not an issue. But I think, your point about, you basically described a convenience store to be your optimum place to recharge your vehicle. The conversations we've been having through the Institute and NACS with the charging companies and the electric vehicle advocates is there are 150,000 gas stations in the United States. If you want to reduce the hurdles to adoption of a new technology, reduce the hurdles. Cite the chargers where the customers are already in the habit of frequenting. Put them at gas stations and convenience stores, because then they don't have to learn a new travel route. They can go there. And we're telling the convenience retailers there's opportunities here. You may not make money at it right away, but there's opportunities here to provide infrastructure. And one of the lines I started using this year in some of my presentations was, the electric vehicle customer tomorrow is buying gasoline at your store today. Mm-hmm. You want to service your customer. Who cares what car they're driving? You want to service your customer. How are you going to do that? And I think if we can marry up the existing infrastructure with the needs for charging infrastructure, then it's going to provide customers a little more comfort and give them more consistency in their behavior.
That makes perfect sense. And also, where are gas stations located right now? They're along major thoroughfares, places where people drive. That's not going to change regardless of the type of propulsion. And then the other thing I'll just toss in there is that whenever we talk about something decreasing, it's very scary, but it's important to consider the rate of decrease in the same way that vehicle sales, moving into 2019, are trending downward versus 2018. It's only going to be like a 2% drop. So we're just barely under 17 million sales is what they're projecting for 2019. Nearly 17 million sales is still a lot of cars. Mm-hmm. In the same way, as electrified transportation, starts to come on, that doesn't mean that nobody's going to be driving gasoline cars. It just means that the ratio may change, and it's very difficult to predict what that ratio is going to look like. But I'm guessing it's going to be a slow transition.
And as KBB knows very well, we sell more than 40 million pre-owned cars every year too.
Yes. The used market is huge.
Yeah.
And, before we wrap this up, I saw your video recently on your channel when you were taking the Mini Cooper in England, 1998 Mini Cooper. So I won't go into that because I want to kind of segue into a new episode with you in the future. But as you both kind of mentioned, that used market is something we don't even talk about. Those cars are still being driven. So even though we have this new market of alternative fuel vehicles coming on and we're building an infrastructure for it, there are a lot of cars currently that still take the current transportation system it works for. We can't not pay attention to those cars.
That is a great point too. I'll just quickly add that average transaction prices have increased. Interest in used cars has gone up substantially in recent years, and so there's a lot of used cars out there that are going to be burning gasoline, and they'll need to fill those up somewhere.
Indeed. We appreciate that. And Micah, again, this has been a dream for me to actually get to finally meet you and have you and introduce you to our guests. Now, where can our guests find KBB on YouTube?
The easiest way is just to search KBB, and that'll lead you right to me. I'll be waiting.
All right. Well, thank you, Micah. And thank you, everyone, for listening. I'm sure you picked up a few points that people are still buying cars. Consumers still need them. We're looking at an infrastructure for future vehicles being built. But currently, C-stores are a perfect match for both. So again, we thank you, Micah. We thank you, John. And thank you for listening to Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.